Welcome to the Fashion Translator. I'm Claire, your host. Together we explore how AI and innovation are reshaping the fashion industry through creativity, technology, and global partnership. For today's episode, I'm excited to welcome Dario Markovic, CEO of Eric Javits, a heritage accessory company built over decades at the intersection of design and functionality. Dario, thank you so much for joining me. To start, could you walk us through your journey and share with us what led you into stepping into leadership role at Eric Javits?
Sure. Thank you, Claire, for the intro. Thank you for having me. I'm 14 plus year D2C operator. E-commerce was always my specialty. As you said, Eric Javits does exist now for over 41 years. So it's a brand that is even bit older than I am. Founded by Eric, 85. My kind of involvement into the company came just prior or in the time when COVID started in 2020, beginning of 2020. I knew the founder, Eric, before that. We were friends. We met a few years earlier. My involvement came as a CEO in leadership and as a partner because the brand needed help. So I was kind of introduced to I started as a consultant. I was trying to help out during COVID. Brand was primarily focused on the B2B. So I was pretty much just servicing retailers, Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, Neiman, Saks, and like a lot of small stores nationwide in the US and around the world. And that led to the problem as physical stores closed. Hey, what we do, business is at risk. And I came in as a consultant. We kind of, had very, very short, limited time to set things up to function in a D2C manner. And that led, me to prove the value. And we were very, very, very successful in a super short amount of time. That's where I kind of was offered a come on board. And now we're about a week away since we kind of first talked. About to be 6 years and officially started in June, but end of April is where we kind of started working together. So it's been, super great 6 years.
Wow, that's quite a milestone.
Yeah. It's I couldn't believe it. I was initially thinking, hey, this is going to be a few months engagement, and one never knew how things will evolve. But we're basically a New York-based company. That's where the company was born. We had a physical location. We had 38 people working there, and now we actually moved to Miami over a year ago. Much smaller team, kind of design focused. At the same time, we grew the brand to 4x revenue, whatever we had back in 2020, and prior to that, and when we have just like 7 folks instead of 38. So
if you look at this, now that we're approaching this milestone, what have been some of the highlights for you?
It's been a roller coaster for us, starting with COVID, logistical issues. We were kind of D2C. We started with zero own clients or own data. So we didn't own the data. Prior to that, imagine being in business for like 35 years and not owning any data besides like customer wholesale, but not really customer data. So building this up and just managing through the environment of like tariffs, of the logistical issues happening during COVID, to oversupply, to trying to diversify manufacturing, to latest last year issues. How do we set up costing now as supply chain again and tariffs? And then uncertainty, basically. But at the same time, we were able always to grow year over year, the last basically 5 years. So that's a great thing. But it did come with a cost, right? Sometimes, you just forecasted better results and they're not there. Sometimes you did this, sometimes you did that. And then I guess with every other business owner that deals, you have 100 other small problems that you never thought they will appear, and they appear.
Yes, that has to be navigated. If we look at the process, could you give us like a high level step by step, or kind of like the process that naturally follows through if we look beyond design? Like once you have the design brief or the initial design ideas that is handled by your partner, what does it take from there to take that design into an actual product that will land in the end of the consumer?
As you can imagine, every designer has its own thoughts and it is special in its own way. which can be a good, very good thing, but also at the same time a complicated thing where timelines are much longer than they ideally are for an operator. So usually once sample is sent to manufacturer, there's this unfortunately there's like this back and go of like sending samples back and
Yeah.
forth between like the designer and the manufacturers and iterating on the product, even though we still do things very old fashioned where we send the product, we send the samples cut out. I mean, it's like they have really everything to its core. It's not really just a drawing. So it takes initially maybe a longer time, but then the advantage is for us, at least, we do work with manufacturers that we have worked for at least 15 or 20 years. So that's very helpful with shortening that time to get to market with the product. But still, once a sample is approved, I would say it still takes about 60 days, sometimes to 90 days to get the product in the warehouse ready to sell.
So all of these steps and all of these different components that all have to come together are often not perceived from the consumer. The consumer can perceive, oh, someone designs it and then someone makes it, but all of these different moving parts that are involved are very often not something that people are aware of. And what would you say is something else that would be either a misconception or something that you would say is not often perceived when it comes to the accessory industry?
I think, and I myself feel that I didn't see that or I didn't get that in the past, which I don't blame anyone. But it is like, let's say, piece of handbag that was designed, and then someone says, "Hey, this handbag looks exactly the same one as the one in C and H&M or Zara," and hey, it costs me just like really a fraction of like what a more quality product will be. And then, many think, hey, it's just the scale because these brands get cheaper per unit. But it comes to a lot of more complexity where every leather or every hardware or every zipper or every lining or the material was tested, was made sure it went through certain tests, it was hand stitched. There's so many steps. Again, and consumer has a misconception of like, hey, why would I price this, or why should this cost this, why should this worth what it's worth, or why should I pay this amount? And people don't appreciate things, and not just in fashion, I'd say in a lot of other things, if they don't see it or if they don't go through it with their own eyes or with their own experience and see,
Yeah.
hey, this is crazy. What does it take really to get this to the store or to get this in my hands? If you jump through all these like 50 things, then you would say, okay, it's fair. So maybe it's also a problem of us or the brands not communicating in a certain way and the end consumer to understand. But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And now we've brushed on the topic of supplier and material and manufacturer. So tell us from your perspective, what is one of the most valuable thing when you look at a relationship with a specific supplier? What is one thing that you value above all?
Being reliant on basically trusting the quality, reliance on like the same output over and over again. I think that's super important. Us having partners that we work long with then doesn't mean or did not mean that we don't go out and test, which we do. And then you just see, hey, you can't either rely on consistency of quality or in speed. So those are the two things I would say are the two most important one. If someone promises, hey, this is the quality I can give you, and then does it in a certain speed, because you're, at least for small brands, we're always late or we're always against the pressure, we're against the time to get things on the market in the right time. With bigger brands doesn't happen as often as they have better budget and better planning, much more folks, much more people, and much more manufacturers to get things. But that's I was saying reliable and the speed is the two most ones.
And if we look at the other side, the retail partners, if you were to also highlight one thing that you value for the relationship with the retail partners?
I think what we value obviously is we had I think every brand has its share of like difficulties working with, I guess, retailers in a certain spot. I'd say there's a difference between the big retailers and there's the difference between the small stores that one is servicing. Usually that's a great relationship and we kind of love because they're better to give feedback, the smaller stores, to, hey, this is working great, or this is, we'd love to more here. even though the volume is not big, but you get that, feedback, which one is perhaps not getting through an online store.
Mm-hmm.
And working with the bigger stores is obviously location, being able to you have your product at one of the best or most expensive retail locations around the world, be it
Yeah.
in New York, in LA. Obviously, that comes with its complexity of working with those retailers.
Yes, a lot more logistic, a lot more manuals and portal and different layers of complexity for sure.
I guess it would be a different story to talk about it.
Both in itself, like if you look at the small businesses and the big business, there are two different avenues, but we could be talking endlessly for both of these avenues have comes with their benefits, advantage, and layers of complexity also. So when it comes to your business, which area would you say has most of your focus right now?
I guess what everyone else would say as well, AI and automations. It's, I think, where we are right now, fully 100% putting all the focus in how, not if, how should we
Yeah.
incorporate AI? Yeah, until like when should it go live and how do we test it? But so that those are the two, like hows, not if, not when. It's like how.
And so far in what you've been implementing or researching or exploring, which facet of the company or your daily operation workflow, which part has been most valuable?
First of all, it does incredibly increase efficiency, productivity, and speed of getting things done. It's just, and by the week, it gets smarter and it gets better, which one wasn't even expecting it to be. So I think the quality is definitely great. So we see, first of all, it's important to have the data or to have the infrastructure set.
Yeah.
Be it, hey, I'm using this ERP, I'm using this freight forwarder, I'm using this, and all of them should ideally be connected through an API or something, and then
Yeah.
it comes the layer of AI of an MCP that brings you to like, hey, how fast will I get it to market and how fast will I sell through and how fast this, like, you can really just having the structure, the base done. I think the limits are not really set. Like we humans set limits and there are no limits set right now. So I think that's the great thing.
Yeah, there's no limit, and both in the options and the functionality, and this non-existing limit can keeps being pushed and pushed, and just keep on. We're having more option, and every day the possibilities are really endless, and sometimes it can feel a bit overwhelming, or there's going to be like trial and error, and because not every company will need the same thing and not at the same scales, and it's kind of like for each business owner to kind of navigate this landscape and see what's most relevant for them at which scale. And in what you've been implementing so far, or what you're looking to implement, if there was one thing that you could automate, I give you a magic wand, and then with one tap of the magic wand, it's already done and already automated. What would it be?
That's a super tough question because for me, it will be pretty much everything. Yeah,
We're going there.
if I could replace myself or automate myself, that would be a big win. Yeah, I'm
I'm
really
sure they're
going.
working
I
on it.
just sometimes feel I am a liability to myself. So it's when you see what's possible. Um, wow, that's a super difficult question. I think once starts, if I want to answer, not like to just like pointing out one thing, it's like, hey, what's the biggest cost factor for my operation? So what was like the biggest pain point? And you would start from there. As an entrepreneur, I think everyone relates to what you know, hey, I can't control this. This is a big costing factor, and this is,
Yeah,
very slow moving or whatever. If you can just replace that, I think that will
yeah.
be it. If it's either inventory allocation, inventory forecast, like maybe too simple, but like as in bringing up examples, like, hey,
Mhm.
where I tie my most money. So that will be kind of the first thing I would kind of say is a thing. If I would just could replace, I could, will replace.
That makes sense, because then after that money can be reinvested into automating the second thing, and then the third, and then we can go like this. So of course with AI and everything, there's a lot of exciting things coming. But if we look at Eric Javits, what is the next phase of growth for the next, let's say, looking at the next 2, 3 years?
I think we definitely want to continue growing our revenue from the standpoint where we are right now, but in a more efficient way as we did in the last 5 years. We knew we can grow it, but there's a lot of, I'd say, wasted efforts or things that you do. Let's say, hey, we brought in shoes, right, in 2020 too, even though I did shoes very, very long ago successfully. And then he sold that in business and we started that again. And you were just not able to foresee and being margins, being like supply chain, being that we brought a lot of things that are not efficient in. Now the idea is like, hey, we can do things perhaps more efficiently with more intelligence in the next 3 years, but grow more efficiently, more profitable, focus on things and not less on 10 things and bringing in just shoes and this and that instead of like, hey, we can just grow in where we strongest, we're the strongest in hats, but we do children's hats and we do similar like mini Hamptons or mini visors and many things. So things like that, I would say, is where we see the biggest chances, and hopefully we can focus in the next 3 years to grow much healthier.
There's for sure a lot of exciting things and opportunities to be keeping an eye on in the future in general, and for Eric Javits for sure. So we'll be keeping an eye. For all the listeners who wants to connect or stay in touch, all the links and handles will be in the description. Dario, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me, Claire.